hands is the future in, and who shapes tomorrow's world? Your future is in your hands. Told from the adult to the child, this statement truly perplexes me. Growing up, I was always told that adults knew best, and I took this as an absolute. I was also told that if I go to church and listen to what I was taught, that I would be a better person for it. Church then became a process. Every week I went in empty, came back out with a week's scripture. And even when the oddest things were said, I never asked why. You see, I had no reason to. I became a robot going in for my regular data update, week in, week out. And this information, molding my thoughts, my actions, me. Now, for the longest time, I have been taught religion in only one way, intentionally or not. That Christ is the one true God, and it was up to me, Louis, to go out, maybe bring in some new followers. I remember at age 9, my pastor telling me to go out and tell my Muslim friend about Christ, his death on the cross, and that he is the one true God. And I did. On several occasions, in fact, I did. At age 17, I was seated in church, and after our service, this man came up on stage. He wasn't exactly a pastor, but he was someone in the church. And so he came up and told us, I'm paraphrasing, "You see, I admire the Muslims so much because they follow the wrong religion and do it so well, while we Christians follow the right one, yet do so little to actually follow it." This man just told a group of 30, 16 to 18-year-olds that Christianity was right, innately making Islam wrong. Now, after you leave church, the conversation with most people then becomes, well, what did you learn in church? You see, I was no different. When I got home, my mom asked me what I'd learned. I simply gave her the premise of the service, and that was it. You see, I did not want to speak ill of an institution basing my judgment on the actions of one man. Weeks passed, and I put it behind me, only for it to come up again. On a table with a group of my friends from the better portion of East Africa, we arrived at the topic of religion. And so I immediately took on control of the conversation and shared with them my story. And they resonated with me. Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, the same narrative. They spoke on how they had been taught religion as this absolute and its integration into everyday life as another. Amid this reminiscing, someone said something which changed the entire course of our conversation. She said that she had never been taught religion this way. She spoke on how she had been taught religion. She talked about how this concept of religion being absolute was never brought into the services. She spoke on how the Bible was used as a guide, and the stories within the Bible, symbols, making her a better person. She did not grow up in the better portion of East Africa. She grew up in the West, where the rhetoric might have been different, or the person teaching her thought differently. Now, what happened in that class was that a seed was planted in every young mind that did not know any better. An abundance of malleable sponges all absorbing what they were told without a second thought. You see, we were told we were better. Above all others, we were better. Church is where you go to learn the truth about God, be a better person, everything that's said, taken with no filter. Now, with this example, it's easy to point at someone else as a perpetrator. It's easy to say it was him. But before we can look at how other people affect society, we need to see how we do the same thing. I want you to think about something for me. Think about your home. What feeling does it bring out? Personally, home brings out this feeling of safety. Now, I'm going to share with you Brian's story. Brian was normal all his life. He knew it, his parents knew it, his friends knew it. Brian was loved by everyone. Brian gave you no reason to dislike him. Brian was chilled. Suddenly, at age 16, things began to change. It started at home. He would talk back to his parents when conversations became difficult to have. He became highly defensive when disagreements presented themselves. Then, manifested in school. Most of the time, Brian was pretty normal. But then, the smallest things would either tick him off or put him completely off. When Brian became mad, he was an inferno. When he became sad, another extreme case. Furthermore, Brian lived in a traditionally African home. His father was a strong man who did not take kindly to nonsense. When he saw Brian's anger manifest, he made it his mission to put Brian in his place. When he saw Brian's perceived sadness, he just took it as laziness and gave Brian something to do. Now, while the rest of the world saw Brian as a boy who had lost his way, Brian was hurting, afraid, and alone. Now, one morning, everyone was awake. And then Brian's mom noticed that Brian wasn't. And this was odd because 9 a.m. would never reach before Brian's hunger. And so she got off her seat, ran downstairs, turned his door, and guess what she found? Brian was sleeping. He was sleeping, and he had a book on his side table with a pen bookmarking a page. And so she took it, opened it up, and read it. Brian's words told it all. He wrote down how his friend gave him that book to write down his feelings because he felt like no one else would understand them. He wrote down how he went to his father telling him that he does not feel okay. And his father told him, occupy your mind with something else. He wrote down how he felt like a victim to his own emotions. He wrote down how he went back to his father a second time and told him that he's seriously not okay. He told him that he seriously needs professional help. And you know what his father told him? You're not mad, Brian. This is not African. It's not. This is not African. Brian's words shattered this facade that his mother had surrounded herself by. And so, worried and afraid for Brian, she did get him professional help. Brian was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Now, Brian's case is lucky, but let's take it into a situation where Brian never gets this help. He grows up knowing that something is not okay, but can't explain what. And so, he just learns to live with it. Now, Brian lives with it. Brian was lucky. Indeed, he was. Now, what do these two narratives have in common? You see, the first narrative, it is clear that a seed is planted in a young mind through unfiltered speech. This bias is then put in, affecting this individual's ability to interact with people on a global scale. The second example, mental health. Now, this poses an even larger threat to the African society. By not giving it a name, we allow it to be the silent demon that overtakes us. When we say that we are African men and so we go to the barber or the bar and talk about our issues with our fellow men. When we say that we are African women and so we go to the salon with a group of our women and just talk about it, we limit ourselves. Now, why am I the piece of the puzzle that changes its perception? Why am I? No. The better question is, how are you the piece of the puzzle that changes its perception? I believe that in the African context, we need to promote thought. We need to be able to tackle things head on without ignoring them, letting them pass down like hereditary diseases. Now, a wise man once said, utopia is a distant illusion we all choose to ignore because of its possibility. Its idealistic nature needs no chasing except in works of fiction. But imagine a world where all people can achieve the best they can be, where all people, regardless of who, can be treated and valued in the same way, which seems like something we should all push from the African society. Which seems like something that will push the African society into a place which is better than it is now. We have no reason to plant something which we do not want to harvest. Thank you.